All right, so today we're diving deep into travel language hacks.
Oh,
Things that can make your next trip smoother and more enjoyable, even if you don't exactly speak the language.
right.
So we've got all kinds of expert advice and real-world tips that we're going to be going through
Hmm.
to kind of help people navigate those language barriers. And again, this isn't about becoming fluent overnight.
Right.
It's more about just giving you those practical strategies that'll help you get what you need,
Yeah,
connect with the locals, and maybe even have some laughs along the way.
absolutely. I think, a lot of times we can build up these language barriers in our mind and think, oh gosh, I need to be fluent to even attempt to communicate.
Right.
But the truth is, with a little preparation and the right approach, you can make a world of difference.
So, okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah,
You mentioned
yeah,
preparation.
yeah.
What kind of groundwork can we lay before we even set foot on the plane?
Well, first off, even just learning a few basic phrases
Yeah.
like hello, thank you, excuse me, can go a long way in just showing respect
Mm.
and opening doors for you. It shows that you're making an effort.
Right.
And I think that can really set the tone for more positive interactions.
I see your point. It's like extending a hand, before you even try and launch into a full-blown conversation. Realistically, though, how much can you cover with just a handful of phrases?
Well, you'd be surprised. If you think about some of the common travel situations
Okay.
you're likely to encounter, ordering food,
Yeah.
asking directions, checking into your hotel, just jot down some of those key phrases for those scenarios,
Right.
and you'll be amazed at how much smoother those interactions can be.
That's a great point. But I've also heard that communication is about more than just words.
Oh, for sure.
In fact, one of our sources claims that a whopping 93% of communication is nonverbal.
Wow.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely true. Body language,
Yeah.
facial expressions, gestures all play a huge role in how we communicate, especially when words fail us.
Way.
But here's the catch. Those nonverbal cues
Yeah.
can really vary significantly across cultures.
Which is where it gets tricky.
Yes.
Because what's considered friendly in one culture
Exactly.
could be totally misinterpreted in another.
Exactly. So before you start, throwing around thumbs up or peace
Mhm.
signs, do a little research on
Yeah.
some of the common gestures in your destination.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You don't want to offend anyone accidentally.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the sources mentioned a funny anecdote about how smiling can have different meanings
Oh, really?
in different cultures.
Yeah.
Apparently, in some cultures, smiling at strangers can be seen as, well, strange. So
Interesting.
it's definitely worth doing your homework on those cultural nuances.
Absolutely. And speaking of doing your homework, let's not forget about all of the incredible tools that we have at our fingertips these days, like translation apps.
Oh, yeah.
They've become incredibly sophisticated,
For sure.
and they can be absolute lifesavers in a pinch.
Oh, Google Translate is my go-to.
Yep.
But I also know it's not perfect. And one of our sources cautioned against relying solely on technology.
Yeah, that's right.
What happens if your phone dies or you're in an area with no signal?
That's why it's always wise to have a backup plan. Good old-fashioned pen and paper can be your best friend.
Okay.
Think about it. You can draw diagrams.
Right.
You can sketch out maps. You could even play a quick game of Pictionary to try and get your point across.
I love that. It's like tapping into your inner artist to communicate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's something really satisfying about having to use, your wit and your resourcefulness
Yeah.
to navigate some of those communication challenges. It's all part of the adventure.
Okay, so we've got our basic phrases. We're
Right.
brushing up on our nonverbal cues.
Right.
And we've got our trusty translation app and a backup notepad ready to go.
Awesome.
But even with all that, I'm guessing there will still be moments of awkwardness,
Oh, of course.
maybe even some epic communication fails. How do
Absolutely.
we handle those?
Well, first off, remember that everybody makes mistakes,
Mhm.
especially when you're trying to navigate a new language. It's part of the learning process. And honestly, often those awkward moments can lead to the most memorable travel stories.
Okay, I'm starting to see your point.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the awkwardness, the miscommunications,
Yeah.
the moments when we're completely out of our depth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One source suggested reframing those experiences and seeing them not as failures, but as opportunities to learn and connect and have a good laugh.
Right?
And I couldn't agree more. And just dive in, Trust me, the locals will really appreciate your effort, and you might be surprised at how quickly you can connect with people, even with a limited vocabulary.
You're right. I remember this one time I was in Thailand, and I was trying to order pad thai, but I totally butchered the pronunciation. The waiter just smiled,
Uh-huh.
corrected me gently, and we all had a good laugh about it.
See, those shared moments of awkwardness, I think, can really break down barriers and lead to some really genuine connections.
Yeah, for sure. So how about those times when we need to rely on more than just those basic phrases?
Yeah.
Like, let's say we want to ask for something specific, like a vegetarian dish or a room with a view. How do we navigate those trickier requests?
Well, one strategy is to try and learn a few key descriptive words that you can use in a variety of situations.
Yeah, okay.
For instance, words like big, small, hot, cold, spicy, sweet.
Yeah.
These can be really helpful when you're trying to convey your preferences.
That's a great tip. And I've also found that learning a few basic verbs can really expand your communication abilities as well.
Absolutely.
Like, think about verbs like want, need, have, go see.
hmm
You can combine those with nouns and adjectives to create some pretty simple sentences.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of pointing.
Oh, right.
If you're at a restaurant and you see a dish that you want to try, just point to it and say, this one. It's a universally understood gesture.
Okay, so we've got some basic vocabulary.
Right?
We're not afraid to point,
Yep.
and we're embracing those awkward moments.
I love it.
But what about those times when we're just completely stumped?
Yeah.
Like, let's say we're trying to explain a complex concept or understand a complicated set of directions.
Right.
What do we do then?
Well, that's where those trusty translation apps can really come in handy.
Okay.
But even without technology, there are definitely strategies that we can employ. One approach is to try and break down the concept into smaller, more manageable chunks.
So instead of trying to explain, the entire history of quantum physics,
Yeah.
we could focus on explaining just a single concept or principle.
Exactly. And remember, visuals can be incredibly helpful.
Right.
If you're trying to explain something complex, try drawing a diagram or using your hands to create a visual representation.
I've also found that using metaphors or analogies can be a great way to bridge that communication gap as well.
Oh, absolutely.
It's about finding a common point of reference, even if you don't share a common language.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask for clarification. If someone is explaining something that you don't understand, just say, could you explain that again? Or, I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so we're getting pretty good at asking questions and explaining ourselves.
Right.
But what about when the tables are turned and someone is asking us questions in a language we barely understand?
That can be nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
But the key is to stay calm. Listen attentively and use context clues to try and figure out what they're asking.
One source suggested focusing on keywords and body language to decipher the meaning.
Right?
Like if someone is pointing at a landmark and asking a question,
Yeah.
you could probably assume that they're asking for directions or information about that place.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask for repetition or clarification.
Yeah.
You can say, could you repeat that, please? Or, I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Right. And if all else fails, a simple smile and a shrug can sometimes go a long way in diffusing the situation.
Absolutely. It's about acknowledging that you're not fluent, but you're still open to communication and connection.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here,
We have.
from basic phrases and nonverbal cues to navigating complex conversations and handling those inevitable communication breakdowns.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what about those deeper, more meaningful interactions?
Right.
How do we move beyond the transactional
Yeah.
and really connect with locals on a more personal level?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it seems like we've been focused on like the functional side of language,
Right.
like how to get things done, how to navigate those practical situations. But travel is about so much more than just the logistics,
Oh, absolutely.
right? It's about connecting with people, experiencing different cultures, broadening our perspectives.
You hit the nail on the head. And one of the most powerful ways to achieve that deeper connection, I think, is through storytelling.
Okay.
Stories have this incredible ability to transcend those language barriers and create those bonds of shared understanding.
That's fascinating. I've definitely had that experience before, where you're listening to someone recount a tale. And even if you don't understand all the words, you're just captivated by their emotions, their expressions, the way they're kind of painting a picture with their words.
Exactly. It's like tapping into that universal human experience.
Right.
That language that speaks to the heart rather than the head.
Yeah.
And as travelers, we have this amazing opportunity to both hear and share those stories that connect us across cultures.
So how do we as travelers become more adept at this art of storytelling? How do we unlock those captivating narratives that are kind of hidden beneath the surface of unfamiliar words?
Well, I think it starts with being a good listener.
Okay.
Even if we don't understand every nuance of the spoken language, we can still pay attention to the speaker's tone of voice, their facial expressions, their
Mm.
gestures. Those nonverbal cues can reveal volumes about the story's emotional landscape.
Like reading between the lines, right?
Yeah,
Sensing
yeah.
the joy, the sorrow, the excitement, the fear.
Absolutely.
Like those universal emotions that connect us as humans.
Yeah.
But how do we encourage people to share those stories with us, especially if we don't share a common language?
One powerful strategy is to ask open-ended questions.
Okay.
So instead of just saying, did you enjoy the festival? You could say, tell me about the festival.
Right.
It invites the speaker to share their experiences and perspectives in a more meaningful way.
I see what you mean. It's about creating that space for their story to unfold naturally,
Yeah,
rather than just seeking a simple yes or no answer.
exactly. And sometimes the best stories can emerge from the most unexpected encounters.
Right.
A chance conversation with a taxi driver, a chat with the shopkeeper, a shared meal with a local family.
Hmm.
Those serendipitous moments are often where the magic happens.
I love that. It's about being open to those unexpected connections.
Yeah.
Those moments where a simple interaction can blossom into, a profound exchange of stories and experiences.
Absolutely. And, technology can also play a role in facilitating these cross-cultural storytelling exchanges. Imagine showing someone a photo of your hometown and using a translation app to ask, what's this place like in your country?
That's a great idea. It's like using technology as a bridge to spark conversation
Exactly.
and create a shared point of reference.
And even something as simple as sharing a funny video or a piece of music
Right.
can open up a world of shared experiences and stories. It's
Mhm.
about finding those creative ways to connect even when words fail us.
So it's about being open, curious, and willing to step outside our comfort zones.
Yeah.
And it's about recognizing that even if we don't speak the same language, we can still connect through the power of storytelling.
Beautifully said. And as we wrap up this deep dive into conquering language barriers, let's remember that the most important language we can learn is the language of empathy, a language that transcends words and speaks to the heart of our shared humanity.
So true. It's about approaching every interaction with curiosity, respect, and a genuine desire to connect. And to all our fellow travelers out there, remember that the world is full of incredible stories just waiting to be discovered, shared, and cherished.